Welcome to Strength Happens. I'm Janine, and I want to introduce you to someone very special to me. She's been my ride or die since our girls' drop-off days in preschool. And I couldn't have imagined doing this journey with anyone else.
I'm Jill, and it started 20 plus years ago when our girls were in a varying exceptionalities preschool class. We were just two moms, and we were trying to navigate a world that we didn't plan for. And we somehow found each other in the process.
Yep. Never did I imagine I'd find my best friend and the person that probably completes me in such a hard time in our lives.
And this podcast is going to be about that bond because we've been through things that most people don't go through in a lifetime. And our kids have been through things most people don't go through in a lifetime.
Yep.
And this podcast is going to be about us showing up for our kids, showing up for each other, and showing up for ourselves. Because sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves. But it's
very often.
Very often.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes a very complicated, messy life. But we've been able to do it, and I couldn't have done it without you.
Say,
Ditto.
Stop there.
I still can't believe that our friendship started in Miss Barber's class. When the girls were in that preschool class and it was just, I don't know, Miss Barber's first year teaching, I kind of felt like it was a first for all of us. You, me, Miss Barber, and the girls.
Yeah, I think it was a really special experience.
Definitely.
She was so flexible.
So open. She'd ask you for suggestions. She
was like, what is sensory integration?
Yeah, did you give her the book?
Yes, I bought her.
Child?
Yes,
Yeah.
and she read it.
Yeah.
She called her professor and said, why didn't you teach us this? Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
She called her special education professor at the university and said, why didn't you teach me this? All my kids have sensory issues. But this is before early on when autism and ADHD and neurodivergency, and because sensory integration dysfunction is neurodivergency. And it's when it was all coming out.
Yeah.
And she was like, I needed to know this.
Yeah. Yeah, she was, I think too, her having her disability.
And her husband's.
Yeah.
So I think they were open enough that they knew what it was like to face challenges. And they both had it since they were young. So
yeah, she protected those kiddos.
she did.
Like she treated them as her
loved
own.
them.
Yeah.
And loved us being there.
Yeah, she never was like, I don't want you here
Yeah.
helping or poking your head in, or she was always open to suggestions.
Both of our first kids were born with so many issues. Yeah. God, that's crazy. 21 years ago.
They were so tiny. They were teeny little beings. We called it Strength Happens because, to be honest, how many times have people come up to you when they've observed you and your family and things that, I don't know, we just do. They go like, oh, you're so strong.
I hate that.
I'm like, I'm not any stronger than you are or that you would do, but in the same situation. You're going to show up for your kid day in and day out, and you're going to make sure that whatever obstacles out there, you're going to find a way to make yourselves jump over that hurdle and make whatever they need happen.
And strength isn't pretty. When someone says I'm strong in my image, like you think of somebody, a bodybuilder or working out or being physically fit.
Yeah.
But to me, strength is crying in the shower when the kids are in bed. To me, strength is driving to All Children's again to the hospital on an emergency or calling 911, having to resuscitate your kid or all these things that you don't want to have. It's ugly, but then there's days where it's pretty and it's fun and it's funny.
Yeah.
But strength is not the same for everybody, and it's not something you choose. It's something that...
It could be very quiet too.
Yeah.
Because I know for me, I'll have family reflect on, oh, my sister's going through so much stuff, and they're being a caregiver to like their husband. And I don't know how she does it all the time. And I'll sit back and I'm like, why? I'm like, have you not seen what I've gone through the last 20 years? And like they're idolizing, and not, I don't want to be idolized, not by any means.
No.
But be seen. I want to be seen, and I want to
just
be
validated.
Right, validated that all the things that we've been through, that I stood up and I did something more for them.
Well, and I think the thing too is in the beginning when my oldest Hallie was first diagnosed, like people were there, they were present, they were like, we'll pray for you. They'd show up at the hospital when she'd have to have a surgery. But by the time she was 2, it was common. It was our normal.
Yeah.
So when she had to have a major surgery, it was just me at the hospital. You know, I didn't have somebody else there. I didn't have people bringing her balloons or cards.
Yeah.
because that was her normal. It was our normal. And I think that's what hurt. I don't know. It wasn't like you're saying you don't need the credit for it, but it's just like, I just need the validation that our life is not going to gym and soccer games every day. You know, we did get some of that normalcy with some of our kids, but we didn't in a lot of ways. And that was
It was our firstborn. And that was the one thing
that was the
told us our bond coasters, because it was our firstborn. And we didn't know any better.
No.
And we just learned a lot of times we learned together or from each other.
Like mine had a G tube, and then when yours got the G tube.
That was one of our first real bonding. Is that when I had to change her G-tube, but her tube to the first time to the Mickey button. I had no idea what I was doing.
And we had already done it since Hallie was born.
Yeah. They literally send you the equipment. Here. They send the equipment to your house and they're like, here. And I was like, well, what am I supposed to do with it? And I was like, Jill, I don't know what to do. And you came over with this whole care package, like basket full of crap. It was like medical supplies. And you can, that was real easy. And you're wiping it clean, you pop it out, and you pop it. It took like 2 minutes tops, but it was amazing. Like, I was like,
but the first time I did it, I was in tears by myself. And it was just, and I think that's what I loved was when we were in that preschool class, and I know you were pregnant, very pregnant at the time with the twins, but, and I had Neely was like 18 months old, but I remember, 8 months old. I remember coming in going, Janine's like me. Like, she's smart and she's funny and she's energetic and she's normal, and she's a mom to some child that's beautiful and quirky and fun, and they looked alike. You know, they both had that pale skin and the brown hair. And I was like, oh, I'm not alone. And I think for years I felt.
And I had, it's not like we didn't have friends. Like, and that's the thing. I joined Mom's Club. I did all these things to find my friends and other moms so I could relate to them. But none of them I love them dearly, and I would never take those friendships away, but none of them could give me what I got from you and what I found with you, because no one knows what it's like. And to know that, like, whether it's medically or they're not developing the same way as their other friends, and you're constantly in your mind comparing back and forth of like, number one, why did all this happen? But that's another whole thing. And then
that's a podcast, and
that's like 5. Yeah. And then, or even, what am I doing wrong? Or there's so much questioning, and you're constantly comparing, because that's what society is.
It's what to expect when you're expecting, what to expect when they're born.
That. Like, when
there's milestones. You go to the pediatrician, they're like, is she lifting her head up? Is she babbling? No, thanks for reminding me. She has a chromosome deletion, and it's like, when you finally find someone who has the same story, and our girls are very
the same, it's similar, but it's a similar experience and feelings.
But it's a new normal. Yeah. It's like raising kids wasn't what you saw growing up on a TV show or what you experienced, but it's a new normal. And I think that's what it was you gave me that new normal, that it was going to be okay. And you could have more kids.
And we could have fun. And that's the thing too, is that.
And we could take care of ourselves and each other. Because I think, as moms, historically, we have a tendency to do for everybody else, and we put ourselves last. I think you and I found a way to say, oh, wait, we need to do something for ourselves too. So,
and it's hard. And then once we both started having more children afterwards, then that was another whole story, because your lives shift and you have to share attention that you were giving all to that one child that needed everything from you. Then you had to shift and split and share.
And it's those developmental ages when they're in preschool and babies. And now our kids are all grown, but now we're dealing with the things that came from what happened when they were little, and being in the hospital for 2 weeks or a month with one kid kind of impacts the other. But we don't see that. You triage your kids when they have chronic, and you trade off with your husband at the hospital, and you call grandparents at 2 a.m. when you called an ambulance, and you just do what you have to do. And I think that was one thing I was going to say, was even my mom, who I'm very close to and I love dearly, doesn't get it the same way. Like, my mom had cancer as a teenager, so she had some connection to Hallie's medical issues and the other kids in that way, but she didn't have a sick child. And it's very different when you're
emotional.
I always wanted to be a mom. Yet I have a degree and I have multiple degrees, but I always wanted to be a mom. And then when it doesn't come out the way
Well, because everyone plans like what you think the future of your child's life is going to be. Like,
in your whole family.
yeah, you're like, it's going to be perfect. You have this beautiful baby. You're going to bring the baby home and it's just going to go perfectly fine. They might cry a little bit, but
No.
that whole, yeah. But when that doesn't happen, that it doesn't go to plan, you pivot and you pivot fast. Because if you don't, too much can happen.
100%. 100%. And I think that's so true because
No, that's okay.
it gets you. I haven't talked about the early years in a long time. And
Yeah.
I think,
I think it's a perfect time though.
yeah,
Getting 25 for Halloween.
I know. It's interesting because I think I took our talks for granted all the time because I could stop by and just chat with you. And then I moved 2 years ago to New England from Florida. And now I treasure when we talk on the phone. And I think that's one of the reasons I love this idea of finally doing this podcast. We've tried to do other things, write books together and speak together and all that. But I think this
I don't think
allows
the
us.
time was right.
I think it's when it's the
Our
right
kids
time.
needed us too much.
Yeah,
And
100%.
now, not that they don't need us now, it's just different.
It's different. Yeah.
But I think a lot of this podcast, regardless of what happens with the podcast,
Even if it's for just us.
yeah, I think that it'll be a lot of healing, and I think, and it might give us a lot more self-reflection to help deal with some of the aftermath, like you said, that we're dealing with different issues as adults because our typical children now have other issues, and dealing with that maybe the self-reflection that we do back, looking back in the past, maybe that will help with one of my kids, and helping her deal
And our
with it.
kids kind of mirror too some of the experiences some of your younger girls have had is very similar to what my middle daughter has had. So it's been interesting to see reflexively that their adulthood is changing because of their childhood and it's impacted because of their childhood. So I know we'll talk a lot about that in this podcast, but I think for me, when I think of why we're doing this and being strong is really about me being weak and vulnerable. And I think one of the neat things about our friendship is that like we were been together since Morgan and Hallie were 4. And then our kids got really sick in the middle at different times. And Hallie unfortunately got really ill starting at 12 and passed away at the age of 15. And Morgan got sick around the same time. And I remember we hadn't seen each other for a couple of years, and then your whole family came to the funeral, and I was like, "You're here," and you're like, "Of course I would be here."
Forever would any one of us have missed that.
I think it.
And
just,
we were on vacation. We were at an arthritis conference.
I know that's what I remember
we
because you
drove
had
over,
left, and you were in Orlando.
Yeah.
And I was like, "What are you doing here? What are you talking about?"
Well, because I come over the day, I think the day after she passed, I came over to your house and stopped over.
Yeah.
And then, but I think that was probably a blur for you, like a lot of that.
I don't remember a lot of people that came.
Yeah. But I stayed for a while, and then then I was like, because I was like so feeling awful that I had to leave to go to this conference.
I do remember.
And I was heavily involved in the conference, like
You
in
were
the development
running
and running the children's program. So to me, I was like, that's something I've always struggled in my life with, is how to still show up when you're supposed to show up for like work and your commitments and following through and making sure you do 100%. But yet you have things that come up. Your like life comes up and gets in the way, whether it be a sick child and you have to all of a sudden like call out sick, or you have to quit a job because you've been in and out of the hospital too often that they can't hold that job for you anymore. Or in your case, losing your daughter, then I'm like, how could I not show up? So it's like I just had to pivot, make some accommodations, and make sure. And because it was the Arthritis Foundation, they were
so, and they knew how.
and they understanding, like,
and
it's our community.
I feel like and I hate cliches. Because since we named it Strength Happens, because we hate that people say, "Oh, you're so strong." But I hate the cliche of a silver lining. But I really feel like one of the best things that came out of such a dark time was I think we had a renewal in our friendship.
Yeah.
And like early in our friendship, we were big into running, and now that we're older and wiser, we got back into running. We found that connection again, and it reminded me of why it's so important.
And we even worked together for a while.
I know we did. That was so much fun.
That was really fun.
The second floor door.
I worked full time. That was the first time I truly was.
That was the
working
first time I could
full-time.
work 40 hours.
Me too.
Sadly.
Yeah.
I mean,
and even then it was hard just because I still had to make accommodations for Morgan.
And bus stops.
Yeah.
And
just getting home for the bus and all of these things. And
that normal parents have
Yeah.
to do. But when you have kids who are sick and on feeding tubes or
and I can't have other people getting her and all of
Yeah.
that. But yeah, but I think that really helped solidify too, because we were spending every day together. And,
Yeah.
And when I think too, we remembered what we missed.
I was just about to
each other.
say, it was why it's so important, because I think, and that's the whole thing, as moms, we take ourselves out of the equation. Like, I was in survival mode for 5 years when Hallie started getting sick at 11 or 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And your other kids start worse. I had 3 sick kids, and I just having all these fears, and you go into a shell, and I just basically stayed in my neighborhood, and I
You
see
just go
some
through the
people
motions and
but I didn't go to the village events of
Yeah.
all the girlfriends. I didn't go to social events as often. It was
Yeah.
very heavy. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that we found that and worked in a corporate job at least.
yeah, for a year. I think it was almost a year.
It was a full year
Yeah.
for sure, a little over a year.
And then you deserved it.
And then I left you. So I finally got to use my degree.
Yeah.
I do have a degree in rehabilitation sciences, and I'm a certified rehab counselor. And Hallie was the reason I went back. And, Hallie having a chromosome deletion, a TQ deletion, I wanted to be a therapist like my parents. I'm so cheesy. But then I realized our kids are not treated with dignity and respect. And I'll never forget what made me realize I want to go back to grad school was we had a neurologist. I won't mention names, but we had a neurologist who walked in, and Hallie must have been 3. And he's like, "Oh, I feel so sorry for you." And I was like, "Why?" And he points to Hallie, and she's looking at me. And Hallie goes, "'Cause I'm beautiful."
I was like, go girl.
I was like, "I think you need to leave."
Yeah.
And I was like, and then we had another doctor when I was pregnant with Neely. I just found out I was pregnant, and I was at a new gynecologist. We just moved back to Florida, and Hallie was in a stroller right next to me. A year, 2 years old, a year and a half.
Yeah.
And he looked at her history and pointed to Hallie and said, "So we'll check this pregnancy so you don't have to have another one of her." I could abort Neely.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Excuse me?" And I turned and I walked out. And I went and found my own OBGYN that was a referral from somebody.
I mean, it's one thing to say that there's options out there that, if you like genetic testing, if that's something,
if it's too overwhelming for you,
and that if you inquired about
Yeah.
to me, but to presume that just because your child is less than what you feel is perfect,
well, and for people
it just dismiss you.
And I feel like when you have children with medical issues, people feel like there's no filter. They say whatever the hell they want to say. And they'll ask about, well, what is that tube coming out of her stomach? Or what is this? Or why is this? Or how come you had her? Did you know? And I'm like, how come you had your kid? Like, this is ridiculous.
And that's one thing with Morgan's feeding tube. I always, we'd be at baseball games, and I'd be sitting in the bleachers, and I'd have to tube feed her. I got to the point that I would just lift her shirt up and show her belly. I'd put the tube in, and I would start tubing her. I would have little kids, adults kind of look over. Not saying
we're so curious.
Kids would come over and ask questions. I would share with them why we did that, and that was just food going in her belly, and it just she couldn't chew and swallow. So this is why we do it. And they were just like, okay, and they would move on. Where I felt like adults kind of judge you, like, 100%. Why are you doing that in front of people? Or
we had one adult in our neighborhood or area we live in would say, "I don't understand why," because Hallie would get OT, PT, and speech at the element, and said, "I don't understand why my tax dollars are paying for your kids' therapy."
So rude.
And I was like, well, and I don't know, this is totally a God thing because it wasn't me, but out of nowhere, because I'm not confrontational. I like to speak, but I'm not confrontational at all.
Never.
And out of nowhere, and this is when I was young, Hallie was probably 7. And out of nowhere, I was just like, "I don't know why my tax dollars pay for your kid's baseball field." And then everybody walking home went, "Oh, that was the one time." The one time I can be confrontational is when you defend your kids, because there's that mama bear that, that you have to have.
Yeah.
That's a different mama bear than when you have healthy kids, I think, sometimes. So.
Yeah, it's different. And I think a lot of that comes from, and plus, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of times you just live, because you're living in constant fear.
Crisis. I think
it's
that.
A fight or flight.
Yes. And I am just going to say that's where my weight issues came from, because it's the cortisol levels are always at a high, because we had Hallie coded on us, our youngest B coded on us multiple times. We had emergency printouts of all their medical issues, medications, physicians, everything. And we had it by the front door in a basket. So whoever we called 911 for, we'd grab it with us. We had feeding tubes, PICC lines, all that. And it's like, you are constantly in crisis mode. And, your kid almost dies multiple times. And then she does. And then you got two more you got to take care of. And you're just like, it's hard. It's that fight or flight or freeze.
Yeah. And freeze isn't helping anyone.
No, and that's not a choice. So unfortunately, that's where our strength comes from, out of necessity. And, now I'm finding strength in new ways into adulthood. But those early years is kind of what we're focusing on today, where strength allows us to find each other as friends. Kind of going back to why we're doing this podcast, I know there's a lot of reasons we can think of that we've talked about or in our notes, because others may need to hear this story, because community matters. There's other parents with medical burnout. There's other parents or other families whose marriages or friendships have had to do it. Maybe you've had to advocate for schools. But the reason I think now is the right time is I need this. I need it for me to just continue to heal and to enjoy friendship.
Yeah. Because I think a lot.
And I finally put myself first.
Well, that's just it. Like our whole lives, we've been putting the kids first, which we should do. I mean, they need us and they still need us. But I think now we're at a place where they're a little bit more self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Even though it doesn't always feel that way. God help me.
God help us both.
But I do think that there's a lot of healing that we both still need from just past, because we don't forget. Like, I'm not going to forget the day I had to decide to remove the lens out of Morgan's eye and she'd be blind. I'm like, in that one eye, I didn't have a choice. I mean, I was alone. Stephen was working. He came out of the operating room.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and he came. It was when Hallie was sick. It happened like in 7th grade, I think. But he came out and he's like, look, I really want to, preserve the eye itself. And I really feel like this is the best course of action. So
you had to do it on your own.
Yeah. So I basically was like, I had to make a decision in that moment. How do you make a decision like that in a moment without, how I'm a Google doctor? I'm like, oh, sweet Jesus.
I was going to say, or without your husband.
And I spent hours and hours researching everything. And then I presented to Stephen. So it's not like.
But in that split second,
you had to decide.
She summoned an operator.
So I think I'm like, I said, do it. And then I called Stephen immediately and said, this is what happened. And I will say that out of everything, he has been awesome when it comes to stuff. But when I make a decision about something, it's not like it's me making a decision.
It's a team.
But he will defer to me most of the time because he knows that I'm doing the research. May not be what he would choose initially, but then once we talk about it and I give the information where it came from or whatever, he knows that I'm always going to do what's in her best interest.
100%.
And I 100% believe that he would do the same thing. Like, I know that it was the right decision.
He trusts you, right? That judgment.
But those are like little micro traumas that we've had, little moments that, cause these micro traumas that maybe we still haven't dealt with. Like, I still think back of like when we were building our house and after Morgan was born and we didn't know right away anything was wrong, but I went back once we were starting to figure those out. I'm like, was it because I hung wallpaper? Or was it because we were in a new house that had carpet and I could, all the fumes? So that you think of every darn thing that could possibly have caused something when probably none of it didn't. It's just what happened.
It's just that hasn't been discovered yet.
Right. And that's the thing with her is that we've never had a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
She's just been globally delayed. She's, developmentally delayed. She's this or she's that. But I've never been given a diagnosis. So
that's hard.
For me, it's not so much I want a diagnosis because I would do anything different with treatment per se. It's more of I've never been able to find my own community because I feel like with the Arthritis Foundation, yes, she has arthritis, but all those other kids only had arthritis.
Right.
Or maybe another autoimmune disease, but they weren't cognitively impaired.
You don't get someone who has the same package.
No, and it's two different communities. I know that the community itself with people that have a disability is a big community, and it's a lot of similar shared experiences. But ultimately, I just craved someone that was like me. And like you said earlier, that with the preschool classroom, that was the one thing that you walked away and you were like, oh my God, someone that's like me. Background, person like similar. I would say we're personalities are identical, but we're similar in a lot of ways.
The same shopping stores.
but I feel like when we first were looking at preschools, I went to 3 different schools, and one of them I walked in, and it was just Like, it was just different. It wasn't the experience I wanted for her. And it wasn't even the school itself. Like, for her, I looked around and there was no one like me. I mean, it was just a different school, and it was different neighborhoods. It wasn't like from like over here, and it's like I don't like how you say that. Like,
Yeah, there's no way to put a like
and it's
tag
not
on it to
right.
say this is what I'm looking
But
for.
I wasn't finding like-minded people. Like, I just couldn't.
That's it. It's
Like-
like-minded people.
Yeah.
And Hallie went to
And same situation. Like, I didn't have to work. Thankfully, I didn't have to work when she was little.
yeah.
I mean, it was a blessing because I can't imagine
I
if
had
I
that.
had to like hand her over.
I think I could have. Like, we had a hard enough time finding a preschool to take Hallie.
Right.
Because she
With
went
the
to
feeding tubes, they don't want her.
well, she went to a traditional preschool
Yeah.
in the neighborhood with a neighbor's kid, who became her best friend. But then, or one of her good friends. But then, when she got the medical port, and the feeding tube
That
replaced,
changes.
they had to go to where a nurse was on staff.
Yeah.
And it just shows that dynamics. Like you were saying, you want your community, and I so wanted that too. And Hallie, we were fortunate, had a diagnosis. She had 18q deletion. But when you open the textbooks and the doctor would say, this is what you have, and it would be 5 case studies. And it was like, when I saw Morgan, well, they have many things that are different, the two girls. They at least had some similarities of the low tone and the sense of humor and these different things that were just super, super unique and quirky.
And like, and Morgan
Great
was never
personalities.
one to play with other children. Like, she would play alongside other children, and Hallie got that.
And I think because Hallie did too. Like, she liked to play with kids, but when she preferred to be on her own and play with her dolls, and dress them and play makeup. And I think she enjoyed just Morgan's friendship in and of itself because it was unique. Well, and now she had a lot of dolls. Like, Morgan did have some good.
But I also feel like when it came to other people, like when I was in playgroups with her, Morgan would sit separately because I had to keep her safe because, kids are running around. She couldn't walk at the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like the other kids just weren't curious enough or didn't want to engage with her. And I don't know that it was necessarily about her, but because she wasn't engaging back. I don't know what the difference is because it was us. It was more like, I think we both just kind of understood, and then our kids.
I think our kids are
That's
just
how
kind.
we treat them.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think our kids are just kind individuals. Like, they're human beings that, I don't know that I've never thought about that, but our kids did just always click together. Yeah. All of them did. Hallie adored Morgan.
Yeah.
Like, they would just kind of you're right. They just do their own thing and play with the little pet shop. Little pet shops.
I love those.
Oh, yeah. And they would just play side by side, or they go in the pool, or you'd be with Morgan in the pool, and they'd be fine. And I remember that. I remember being in preschool with Morgan, and you weren't there. I think you had the twins. So I was helping out, and I think taking Morgan home after preschool.
Oh, maybe.
Right after. And so I went in early to help out. And they would do this game where they'd have to sit down and say their name, and they get a sticker. And I didn't know Morgan that well at the time. I had met you a couple times, and we were just getting to know each other. But they would walk around the circle, and then when they'd say, or the teacher would walk around the circle, and then she'd sit down and she'd go sing a song and then say Morgan. And Morgan would have to be sitting down or something like that. And she'd have to shake her hand. Good morning. Yeah. And so Miss Barber's sitting in a little chair. The whole class is in a circle, and Morgan's wandering around the room. And I was like, I didn't know Morgan. That's kind of, I feel bad. And Miss Barber goes, don't you ever pity that girl. And I didn't know Morgan at all. I go, why? She goes, she knows exactly what she's doing. And then they go Tommy, and then Johnny, and then she's about to say Morgan's name, and Morgan come running over, sit down, and go, and give this cute little face and shake her hand and get her sticker. And then she goes, Morgan, you knew it. And she just started laughing. And I was like, oh, that girl's smart. Like, we had so much fun. Oh, and then I think Hallie loved her personality. And
She's funny.
She is. Oh my God, my favorite Morgan story. I tell you this way too much. But when you and I got into running, and you weren't as morning a person as me.
No, I'm still not.
But Morgan was a morning person. She was a leave the house morning person. But I remember sitting there waiting for you to get ready, and Morgan came out and sat down next to me. It's like 6 in the morning or 7 in the morning. So you have to run early in Florida. And Morgan goes, where's Hallie? Where's Hallie? And I was like, Hallie's with her Grammy. And she goes, oh, is that your mommy? Or is that Mr. John's mom? And I was like, Morgan, you are way smarter than people say you are. And she just started laughing, and she goes, shh. was like, you little shit. You
Well,
are so
and like
funny.
I remember from the developmental doctor we had gone to at one point, probably when she was in 4 in the same class. The one thing they had tested and they said her IQ was like 52 or 53 or something. The biggest thing I got from that doctor though is she was like, don't let that number, determine what she's going to accomplish, because she's like, you have people that have 110, 140 IQ and they function at 100.
Yeah.
And then you have the people that are, 50s and they could probably, function at 80 or 90. Determine that her whole life is that number.
Yeah.
And I've always remembered that because there's other times that she'll use words and she'll come up with these little like zings or one-liners like to Steven. And I'm like, there's no way that for her to have been able to process that, use it in the right situation at the right time, her IQ can't be 53. It may very well be based on books, the fact that she doesn't read, she doesn't do math. Like there's a lot of components, but if you're using all of those components to determine her IQ, then you're missing something because
she's
like
so sharp in so many
with
ways.
Music, like she hears a song and she'll be able to identify either who it is, where she heard it from before. So it's
Like,
she
same
just
to me.
certain things that just
She's always impressed me with that. She always keeps you on your toes. Is
She
what Morgan
does.
does. Because as soon as you're like, oh, she's just sitting on the couch, and then she'll pipe up and say something, I'm like, I didn't even remember.
Yeah, she'll poke her head around or poke up and
And she's always listening. That's what I learned from Morgan.
Yeah. The teachers learned that fast. She would like listen to them. They would be like, yeah, we learned today that we can't talk about things in front of Morgan, because they're like even just a meeting.
Yeah, just
they're like, oh, do you have that meeting today? And then you double look at her. They're like, oh, so then they start to realize
she
that they have
remembers
to be
it all.
careful. They have to be careful on what they said. They can't just assume that, she's not understanding or that the kids around them are not understanding.
So funny. I learned that lesson the hard way of not being the one who needs to set high expectations for our kids, similar to what that doctor said. I remember I had an undergrad in child development and a master's in education. And I thought I knew everything when I had this child born with all these issues. And I remember John looking at me Christmas Eve and he's like 6 months old. He goes, when is she going to sit up? And I'm like putting her on, and we're putting her hands down and teaching her how to balance.
Tripod.
Yeah. And you're trying to teach her all those things. I'm doing therapy with her. And it's just him and I and the baby because we were up in Tennessee at the time. And I remember going, John, she has a chromosome deletion. It's similar to like if a child has Down syndrome. And I kind of was condescending to him looking back. He's a saint. And I remember saying, she's not going to do everything at the same speed. You have to accept that she's going to walk later and talk later. And he looked at me and he said, Jill, I don't mean to be rude, but if you're her mom and you're not setting those expectations up high, what does Hallie have to live up to? And I feel like someone hit me in the gut because one, my husband was right and he's never right. I like to be right. I like to be the right one. And it was about the child who I take care of day in and day out for 6.5 months. And I was like, oh my God, yours. And I just started crying. I was like, I failed her, all those things. And here it is Christmas Eve. And he's like, you didn't fail her. Oh my God, I'm sorry I said anything. So the next morning was Christmas morning. And our pediatrician had Hallie coded a lot. And anytime she turned blue or choked, we'd have to take her in to check her airway and all. So he said, I'm doing Christmas Eve with my family. I'm on call from midnight on. If she has an episode, call me at my sound. And she's sitting like this up for the first time on a mattress, on a bed. And John goes, if I don't say so, I think she's sitting. And I think the average age is 6 months. And I was like, you're so right. But that was the moment I think I had to learn that we can't go with what's in a textbook. We can't go on what doctors or specialists say is going to happen per se. You have to let them figure out who they are. I remember my mom said the day Hallie got the diagnosis of a chromosome deletion, she said, the Hallie you held in your arms this morning is the same Hallie sitting here right now with that diagnosis. Nothing changed. You put a label on it. And I was like, oh, you're right. I'm going to love her and treat her just the same.
Right.
And she wrote her own book. Like she did her own thing. But much more to come on that, I'm sure.
I'm sure there'll be lots and lots more to come.
Well,
that's the hope.
That's it, yeah.
That's the hope anyway. People want to hear it.
Yeah, and I thank you for helping me do this. Like you're the one who's like, yeah, we're going to do it this time. We're going to do it. And you made sure we sat down and did this today. So I appreciate that.
Well, I got you for 24 hours.
I know, right? I flew in town for a day. So hopefully we can do more of these. And hopefully our listeners get something out of it, even though we're quirky, may cuss a little sometimes on my side.
We might go all over the place sometimes.
That's
We'll
fine.
round back down to where we need to be.
Yeah. Strength of friendship. That's where we are today.
And that's what we'll celebrate.
Absolutely.
Wherever you are, however strength is happening in your life, we're glad to be walking with you.
We would love for you to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. It's Strength Happens, Real 3. Real friends, real talk, real life. Thanks for tuning in.